What region should we talk about? That's the question. Which region do you want to talk
LCK?
about? Here's the thing. Let's do LCK first, just to switch it up and come back to LCS. Right. In LCK, it's exactly what I was waiting for the whole time, Monty. I have been waiting from the beginning of the playoffs to see GenG play against KT Rolston. That is my number one matchup I want to see the whole time. And not only is it here, but bro, you couldn't even make this more hype. Because on the one hand, we all know KT has shown you the ceiling. Now, don't worry, the floor's way lower than you've seen so far. It can definitely go wrong. But the problem is, suddenly GenG even looks a bit dodgy because of that fucking Hanwha Live series. Like, mate, it feels like it's coming together. I know this is something you've preached against, but I am excited for KT Rolston. Damn it, Monty.
Oh my God.
I am excited for a telecom war final. I believe.
I want the telecom war final as much as I love GenG. So Dom and I had a disagreement, and we talked about this at length on Power Spike. He thinks that it's going to be GenG winning. I think it's going, and I think it's going to be KT, which is a shocking reversal of opinion from Dom, who's a known GenG hater, and I'm a known GenG lover. I think GenG has actually played very well during the playoffs. Sometimes, man, fans just don't understand GenG. And I've talked about this on my streams about why they're good, but the fans literally have a problem where they think that if you are doing something off camera, they just have no object permanence, and they can't understand that teams do things on other parts of the map that they're not
they don't
seeing.
Understand the map player, right? I say yes.
Like they can't look at CS numbers or gold leads, apparently.
Dude, I've always wondered about that, because here's the thing I don't get, Monty. Remember, most fans of League play League of Legends. Just imagine for a second, guys, that you were playing a game of League of Legends, and let's say you're a bot laner. On your part of the map, you're just fighting 2v2, right? Let's imagine every time you get past the mid game, there's just two waves pushing into your base at all times. Like, wouldn't it eventually twig? Like, that doesn't happen by no reason. There must be someone pushing you. You'd look eventually. Like, spoiler, I've just given you the whole clue to how GenG plays right there. If you understand what I just said, it's like Monty said, yeah, they're not doing the big team fight win that makes them win, but they're just fucking shitting on you by understanding the map.
And they're taking all your jungle camps.
Yeah,
but this is the solo queue mentality. So it's true though that this is how solo queue players think. So let's pretend you're in the 2v2 bot lane, and you're kind of getting dunked on a little bit, and maybe you die once or twice, and they take a couple turret plates, and you're just like raging in your chat right now. Fuck you guys! Like, come gank jungler, and then all of a sudden, come the mid game, you group up, and it's like the third Drake, and your mid laner has 50 more CS than the other opponent, is 2,000 gold up, took 5 plates by split pushing in the top lane or whatever, or like took a tier 2 inner from pushing, got all the gold concentrated on them, and then this mid laner just monsters this entire team fight with this massive advantage, and then you're just like, oh shit, well, I guess it was going fine somewhere else. Like,
yes.
This is the mentality that people have. So they just, I guess, refuse to see that things are going elsewhere, and they're like, I mean, this is the biggest tilter for me, is that people talk about Chovy and saying like, oh, he's just split pushing again, not paying attention to the map. I'm like, you realize that the whole team is on board with this strategy, and that he is accomplishing a fuck ton right now. And there's a reason why GenG, in spite of having fewer kills, has a 2,000 or 3,000 gold lead in this game against T1. And you realize that they are trading the first couple of Drakes to take Herald, to take towers, to take plates, so that they can come into a third Drake fight with a substantial gold advantage and, vision control.
Froggen told me this years and years ago. I'm talking literally something like 8 or 9 years ago. And he was so right and prescient. It's insane, Monty. He said basically normal people don't understand the concept of gold in the game, because what they don't know is when I play what they think is a boring lane, but I'm up 25 CS, that's like 2 kills or a kill and a half of gold. But I didn't ever have to take the risk of going and having a fight and potentially dying with that much health, or the jungler happens to come in and clean up the kill. I don't do that. I essentially got the value of the kills for free. I just got it by CSing and pushing them out of lane and having the jungler path at the right time. So essentially, think again of the solo queue example, guys. When you play solo queue, you're playing versus bad players at your level. So even a player who's fed might not do anything with it. Imagine how good pro players are. Now imagine the boring Azir player, Monty. He's only up 50 CS, but he doesn't have any kills, Monty. He hasn't done anything in the game. 50 CS is going to be like an item. Guys, a Z player in the mid game is going to be up a whole item. You can see how that just transfers into wins. Like, if you have the team that can control the map, you win. It's why I'll say this a million times till people get it. The most underrated player in the LEC, and he always will be, is Larson from Koi. If you knew how many coaches, Monte, tell me he would be like the dream mid laner. He's a mid laner that always plays the champions he's really good on and is up in CS every game. What do you want? Like, bro, that's the start. That's like step one of how do I build a consistently winning league. My mid laner is always up in CS without taking massive fucking risks and just plays a mage, which will be very strong, doing loads of DPS. That's the dream, is to have the Azir like that. But the problem is the fan only understands like the fucking pop-off mid laner, the guy who plays the crazy Zoe and does all the crazy bubble through the minion. They get that. They can see flash, but they can never get like, essentially there's a boring way to win in League of Legends, guys. And if you can do that, you will also be very successful, and it's consistent as well. That's what I like about GenG. Dude, the best thing about these two teams, to bring it back, is the contrast. GenG has a really consistent style and they know how they want to play. The joke with KT is KT don't even know how they want to play sometimes, but I'll tell you what, they're fucking exciting. KT is the team that'll just do anything and just go crazy and try and match you with a team fight they have no business being in, do a crazy base race. Like, what I love is the styles couldn't be any more contrasting.
Yeah, and yes, they are very, very exciting to watch in terms of the difference stylistically. But yeah, I think when you look at GenG, you just have to accept that they're playing. And to your point, Thorin, about taking gold other places on the map, here's a crucial factor. Riot has been very slowly, over time, buffing GenG's playstyle. Remember when they started increasing like tier 2 turret gold to encourage more split pushing?
Yep.
At the end of last year, they added, 200 local gold to the Rift Herald, which is almost a kill right there, actually. So if you are prioritizing Herald, and then there's plate gold that you get as well from using the Herald, if you are not losing things, if you are timing it in a way where you give over the dragon, and yes, the drakes all have gold value associated with those statistics, but they're random and they're going to affect team comps differently. And even then, Riot has nerfed the Drake stats again because the Drake stacking was considered too strong. So we're getting into a point where the Drakes are less powerful. Well, if you can take, if you get the first Rift Herald and you get a couple of plates and you're not dying for it because you're timing it around a Drake pickup from the enemy team, even if it's not exactly at the same time, there are windows of time where the other team has to recall after taking Drake, and then you have an opportunity to go get it. And especially if you're dominating mid lane, because remember, part of this series was Chovy blind picking LeBlanc against T1. And this is not something that we see that's very common. But as I've discussed many times, the key to Chovy's LeBlanc is that he plays it very, very differently depending on the matchup that he's in. He will use one of 3 different Keystone runes. He'll use Electrocute or First Strike or Airy, depending on the matchup. And then he'll change between Q max and W max in lane because he knows how to play this champion in all these different matchups to get push and to get advantage. And that is huge. That's huge. So if you have that, you have priority in mid lane basically constantly when he's playing this champion, and he's so fucking good at it. He played it incredibly well versus T1. Had insane backline access. One of the few times I liked seeing an Everfrost LeBlanc because he was using it to lock down carries in the backline to set them up for Jace poke. I mean, he is very, very good. And he creates this insane pressure on the map. He knows how to team fight well. And it is just a lie a lot of the time. Now, I will say, at Worlds this past year, he reverted to old Chovy form, where it was true that he wasn't leaving lane. It was true that he was struggling in order to play the map. But that wasn't true for the majority of for the entire domestic season last year, and it's not true now. If his team is doing something on the other side of the map that gets them killed, it is often their fault. They know that Chovy's not coming. The way they play is to use the split push and to create pressure for Chovy. So let's blame Peanut instead. Let's blame Pays for getting caught out. Let's blame Doran. I mean, Doran had a very bad series against T1. Very bad. But it's not Chovy. And I wish these fucking memes would die because Chovy is very aware now of what's going on the map, and he's playing the map extremely well.
Indeed. You know, a point that you made, I saw this as a clip, I think maybe. A point you made about T1 that I thought was very shrewd was because this is another area where you'll miss it if you watch what the camera's watching, is it does seem like in specific matchups, T1's whole plan is get everyone bot just so then Zeus has a permanent 1v1. And since he's the best 1v1 player, he just wins. The reason that's genius is because one, everyone's going to be looking at all the bot lane chaos and fighting and roaming. So they're not actually going to see what the dynamic is. But even more so, I just think of how many great teams had a great top laner, but it's counterintuitive, Monty. Normally the logic would be if you had the carry top laner, play everything towards him, dive his lane. But actually, as you're saying, it's a very clever way to actually cause an isolation play. That's actually quite interesting, sort of like, it's like there's like a second layer understanding of the meta there that T1's on that the other teams aren't.
Yeah, and I also think that it did bite T1 in the series they played against KT, because they were blind picking the Gnar, and like it gives Keen as a player some really advantageous matchups, and because Keen is so good, it caused issues. But when we saw this series between GenG and T1, where for both teams the Jace was the priority, and actually both mid laners and both top laners ended up playing Jace throughout the series, you know, they were prioritizing Zeus's matchups just a little bit more. And also Doran is he's a weaker player than Keen is. So it was more appropriate in that circumstance. But the strategy for GenG was also kind of hampered because in their last series, you know, they were able to really abuse the Cassandre pick, which is uniquely powerful on GenG because it's a flex pick for them. And Chovy will play in the mid lane, and Chovy is very good at it. And they've been able to set up some really strong frontline compositions that enable Pays to just hard carry on like hyper carries in the back line. And then T1 also just banned out the Zeri for the entire series, which is something they're just going to have to keep doing until Zeri is nerfed, because T1 is just not a Zeri team. They did play it in against KT, but they kind of they lost the game that they played, but it wasn't because of the Zeri. They actually did quite well with it early, but it just doesn't fit their team identity super well. And Gumayusi is not, compared to all of the other players that were left in the LCK playoffs, Pays, Viper, aiming, he's just the worst Zeri amongst all of them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to focus on that champion.
Well, that's weird because he is an all-pro LCK player. Fuck that shit. Fuck that noise, guys. Where all the T1 players are all pro, are they? Like, so dumb. Don't worry, I've got a similar one I'm going to bitch about in LCS later, but I hate that angle. I hate that angle so much.
So I think that what we're running into is just a difference in cultures, Thorin, honestly, because the thing about the Korean culture is it's very collectivistic. So what they prioritize is teamwork, right? They prioritize kind of this selfless dedication to the whole and playing your role within the larger team. And because T1 has such phenomenal teamwork, they are naturally going to prioritize like voting for the players that they feel are contributing the most to the cohesive whole, which makes sense. But there isn't, I'm sorry to say this, guys, there is not a universe, crazy T1 fans, where replacing Gumayusi with Viper is a downgrade. I'm sorry, that's just not true. But they just don't prioritize the individual performance. And they, for whatever reason, it feels like they assume that a stronger individual player would not be able to change their style or mesh, or the other players on the team would be able to shift their style to accommodate those players, which I think is just false. Like, I think it's just
Here's
false.
The thing, it's like you say, if I think about like the philosophy, especially like the Confucian philosophy that underlies their society, it makes sense, because if you've ever seen in interviews, you know, fans, this is one area, by the way, that the players aren't lying in. You know, when pro players, Koreans, famously say that line of like, you know, I apologize to my fans because I lost the final, but you know, if you cheer for me, I'll show better games next time. They're not actually bullshitting you. Like, as mad as it sounds, even if you, like, Chovy's a great example because he's barely ever won. Even if on paper you're the best mid laner or even the best Korean player, you yourself were supposed to think if you lose, even if it's not your fault. Like, remember, Hanwha Life and DRX Chovy, half the time he was carrying a bunch of like nobodies and a bunch of bomb like rookies or corpses like Morgan or whatever. But the point is, he himself is supposed to still think, I also lost to T1 in this match. I also should do better, could do better, must do better to win next time. So I agree. There is a logic they would have, because it's sort of like their reward structure, which is everyone on the number one team that wins all the games must be doing a great job, therefore they're all the best. That actually sort of, in a way, the point is it's just different from the way my lens for players, because obviously I would say one of the main areas of interest for me in team sports is when you have players that are better than the team, or they're better than people in a corresponding team whose team happens to perform better than them. Like, I think that's interesting because, for example, it's why if you were a fan who only looks at the headlines, dude, you would never have expected that KT T1 series, because you'd be like, wait a minute, T1's got all the best players and they're the best team. Well, this KT team has no chance. But what you wouldn't know in that scenario is KT had like 3 players who were like in contention for the best spot and are doing really well. As you say, Keane, if anything, because he doesn't get the chance, what a mad underrated top laner by the end of the split. Eamon's been carrying games all split. And as you said, if anything, I feel like BDD's just still living through the inertia of old GenG BDD. People just won't acknowledge he's the player that he is this year, mate. They act like he's washed. Like, mate, he's had a very good split. I mean, I think you even made the point, right? Like, if you were... I noticed that's already where, you know, these fan discussions are already cursed, mate. When you had that discussion of like, if you had to replace someone, you'd probably take Faker. And then every comment was like, so you're saying they should replace Faker, you fucking moron. Like that's not even what he ever said, is it? Like, you know, by the way, when you listen, you're actually supposed to listen to all the words they say, not just wait for one word to jump out and then go, ding, 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 dinner time. I'm all fucking salivating. No, where's my dinner? Where's my dinner? You rang the bell. You said Faker. T1, 3 world championships, rookie, like just fucking random free association.
I mean, it's very hard to have thought exercises, Thorin, when a lot of fans are actually incapable of thinking. They just respond rapidly to whatever, bait
the joke, Monte, is the problem is they're against both parts, thought and exercise. So shout a lot with League of Legends fans, aren't we? I know. Essentially, Monte, unless we can encode your wisdom into some sort of an E number that goes into some candy or crisps that they eat, there's no way to get the shit into their system, is there? That's the only way we could do it. Like, essentially, this show has been like a 10-year version of the movie Inception, where we're trying to incept into people's idea the concept of macro, just the concept. Like, once we have the concept in, we can do something with it. We've got to get the concept in there first, because at the moment, Monte, the joke is they still think it's just the team fight. It's one of the reasons why I won't lie. Has anyone ever noticed this? Let's see if fans notice this. Has anyone ever noticed Thorin always seems to have a way lower opinion of the LCS commentators than all the LCS fans? They always think they're not only the best, Money, they think they're the best in esports. Here's why I look down on the LCS commentators. Bro, they still do the StarCraft 2 shit where they know a team is massively behind in items, gold, power levels, comp, scaling, but they still commentate it like it's 50-50 and whoever does better with the next punch wins the fight. They still do that shit, which I hated from StarCraft 2, because in StarCraft 2, if you know how the armies work, you know that one guy has no supply left and his bases are all wrecked and they're just coming in to kill his workers. Like, he's not going to hold. And in fact, beyond the most casual guy, it actually feels like you're insulting me and my intelligence when you pretend that it's an equal footing. Like, LCS still talks, guys. Like, the team fight at the end of the game, which just closes the game, is like the middle of the game and it's a 50-50. And it's like, oh, if this Zeri can just pop up, there's Zeri 3 items behind it. You know what I mean? Like, it can't happen, you idiot. So that's why in general, like, guys, LCS just is arcade League of Legends.
I would just talk about Star Wars and Jurassic Park.
You have to, because it gets boring eventually when you know where it's heading, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, time to be interesting, because this game is not. But to be fair to the
and I'll also
casters,
complete the joke, to be fair, since I was talking about LCS casters. I thought my joke on Twitter, look, it was mildly harsh, Monty, but it was funny, which is my brand, right? So as I said, if you don't know, guys, because of all the things that have happened and all the reflections she's going through in her life, Latigris has decided to change her brand. She doesn't want to be called Latigris anymore. She wants to be called Gabby Durden, which is her name now, apparently. I think she got married recently or something. Now, I said, just to honor her wish, Monty, that's all I'm trying to do, just be compassionate. I said, guys, I don't want to see you say anymore, Latigris sucks at casting. It's Gabby Durden sucks at casting. It's what she would have wanted, Monty.
Jesus Christ.
Tis but a joke, and sort of true, but also a joke. So I'll sit in that part.
I mean, I still that experiment I think has absolutely failed.
Also, again, guys, I've waited a whole week. It still hasn't stopped yet. If I see the name Luger and the banner, no, the joke is she's inadvertently being better ambassador for CLG brand than anyone in about the last 5 years. She's already made me care about Luger. There you go.
I was watching the Golden Guardians versus EG match, and she started doing a Moo impersonations in the cast. I was just like, I can't do it, man. I can't.
Okay.
It's gone too far. It's gone too far. But the part where she did the Luger quote, I think one of the things is that she uses too much intonation where it sounds almost cartoonish. It honestly sounded that moment that she was trying to do a Red Eye impersonation.
All right, yeah. Oh, Luger, the blood's running through his veins. He's in a fucking team fight. You're not going to believe this, lads. I'm Latigus, I mean, Gabby Durden, and I'm here for brutal, savage, wrecked. Luger, get out of there, son. Oh, it's ridiculous. Now you say it, I actually can hear it now. You're right, because she did sort of go into that gravelly voice.
It's the growling. It's the growling.
Exactly.
And here's what I think. I think her range is actually really good. If it didn't, the thing is that if she committed to like a few of the intonation changes that were consistent, it would become a style. But instead, she just sounds like a voice actor trying to do every voice on the entire planet. It sounds like a voice acting reel where you're like, here's my range of character.
It's like 100 voices in 60 seconds or whatever. Right?
Like, what is happening? This isn't a style. You're just showing me what you can do. Like, I don't get it.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.